Good afternoon. Today we are going to discuss the specific factor model, and this model accounts for how trade have an impact on the income distribution. So trade brings unequal returns to the factors of production, and this will be quite clear once we discuss the main results of the specific factor model. So here, unlike the Ricardian model, there are three factors of production. One is labor, the second is land, and the third is capital. Now this capital is specific to the production of manufacturing. Although manufacturing product uses both labor and capital, capital is specific to manufacturing and land is specific to the agricultural product. What is mobile is this labor which is present, which is used for manufacturing as well as agriculture. So there is one mobile factor and then there are two immobile factors. Now how can you understand this? You can understand this in a way where you are analyzing only short run phenomena. Remember, in the short run, if you read microeconomics, in the short run some factors are fixed, right. So here in the short run you have capital which cannot move, is specific to manufacturing, and land which is specific to agricultural sector. Now the the PPF is again for the specific factor model is concave to the origin. The slope is given by price of the manufacturing product divided by price of the agricultural product, and so the shape of the PPF is again concave to the origin. So if you are moving from left to right, if you increase the production of manufacturing, you have to decrease the production of agriculture. Now see what happens if you increase the production of manufacturing. If you increase the production of manufacturing, capital is specific to manufacturing, but then if you require more production of manufacturing, you would require more of labor, right. But more of labor will only come if the production of agriculture goes down. So you see a shift of labor or labor moving from agricultural sector to the manufacturing sector, right. Now see what happens. It's a little deviation from from the fact that this manufacturing is capital, it uses capital and labor, this uses land and labor. Okay. The general case is, say for example, one good uses capital labor, another good also uses capital labor, but one good is say capital intensive, another good is labor intensive. We are not discussing that. We are discussing a peculiar case where one factor is specific to this, another factor is specific to agriculture. Land is specific to agriculture, capital is specific to manufacturing. Now something happens in the economy, and I will explain what is that something, which leads to an increase in production of manufacturing. So when there is an increase in production of manufacturing, it will require more of labor, and more of labor will be forthcoming from agricultural, from the decline in production of agriculture. Now when the labor moves here, you know what happens. There is something called the law of diminishing marginal productivity. If you increase labor, the marginal productivity of labor goes down, and there, when the labor moves out from there, the marginal productivity of labor there in the agricultural sector goes up. So here in the manufacturing, marginal productivity of labor goes down, and there the marginal productivity of agriculture goes up. Now if you focus on this, this is going down, this is going up. Can you let me know what would be the net effect? The increase. So remember, if it is concave to the origin, and if you move from left to right, the slope of the PPF increases. So this here, it increases because of the impact that it has on the MPLs. Now at this stage, it is very important to explain the general case. The general case is that if there are two products, one, okay, so I am now deviating, I am not talking of specific factor model now, general model. General model will have manufacturing as a function of labor and capital, and agriculture will be a function of labor and capital. So again, I am saying it has nothing to do with the specific factor model, only that I want to explain that in that case also you will get a concave shaped PPF. This is a production possibility frontier. Why will you get a concave curve? Because here, if you have to get this concave curve, you have to say something more about manufacturing and agriculture. That something more is that this is capital intensive, agriculture is labor intensive. Now if it is capital intensive, see what happens. Something happens in the economy, manufacturing goes up, output of manufacturing goes up. So now manufacturing is capital intensive, right. So it will require more of both factors, but it will require more of capital. Okay. When the production of agriculture goes down, there will be a decline in production, there will be a release of labor and capital, but the amount of capital which is required by manufacturing will not be forthcoming from the agricultural sector. So do you know what will happen to the prices of capital? The prices of capital goes up. Okay. So if the prices of capital goes up, the price of the manufacturing product goes up. So therefore the relative prices go up as you move from left to right. So that is the explanation of the concave PPF in the general case. There you have to assume that one product is capital intensive, another is labor intensive. Here it is capital is specific to manufacturing, land is specific to agricultural sector. So, in the exam there are questions. What is the shape of the PPF in case of the Ricardian model, and what is the explanation? So, then you have to write maybe a 2-mark question. You have to write that the marginal productivities are fixed, constant, therefore the relative prices is a constant. So, therefore you get a straight line downward sloping curve in case of the Ricardian model. In case of a specific factor model, again you get a concave type of PPF, and in the general case also you will get a concave type of a PPF, right. Now, let us see, yeah.
The change in manufacturing products is more than the change in agricultural products.
No, we're not saying anything about how much this product increases or how much is a decline in agriculture. But what we are saying is that when you increase the production of manufacturing, then because it is capital intensive, right, it will require more of capital, which is not forthcoming from agricultural sector, because agricultural sector is labor intensive, right. So, then the relative prices of the capital goes up. As a result, the price of the manufacturing, the relative price of manufacturing also goes up. Okay.
We do the same thing for agriculture, if we move from right to left.
Yeah.
Considering land is constant.
Yeah. So then again I am saying labor and capital, which is common to both. So, here the general case where you have either you can choose land or and capital, land and capital, but it's more natural to assume labor and capital for both. So, when you are moving from right to left, if you increase the production of agricultural sector, agricultural good, because agriculture is labor intensive, it will require more of labor, which is not forthcoming from the decline in production of the manufacturing. So, the relative wage rates go up, W by R ratio goes up. So, W by R ratio goes up, the price of agricultural sector, relative price of agricultural sector, that is price of agriculture by price of manufacturing goes up. Okay. Or if this goes up, this ratio declines. So, you move, you come here. Okay. Now, let us come back to the specific factor model. I talked about that something happens in the manufacturing sector which leads to an increase in production of manufacturing output. That something is trade, and you have already known that with trade the relative prices go up, because it is only when the exporters realize that they are getting higher price for their product, then only they would try to export. So, what we are saying is that this manufacturing is the export sector, agriculture is the importing sector. Okay. You can always think of cases where agriculture is the export sector and manufacturing is the importing sector. Like in Latin America, whether you talk of Bolivia, you talk of Ecuador, they are rich in petroleum, they are rich in natural gas. So, the factor which is specific to the agricultural sector, okay, that is land, is the export sector. So, there the land is the export sector, the other is the importing sector. We are considering manufacturing as the export sector and agriculture as the importing sector. Okay. Now, if trade has to take place, the relative price of manufacturing has to go up. Why? Because in that case only exporters will will export the good. Only when they get higher price for their manufacturing product, then only they will export the good. So, then you move from here to say a point like this. You were here earlier, okay. You get a higher price for your for the good that you're producing. You reach a point like B, and then you reach a point like C, because you can export some part of the manufacturing and import some part of agriculture. So you are on a higher indifference curve. You were here earlier, you reach a higher indifference curve, you get higher level of satisfaction. This is happening because exporters are getting higher prices and importers are importing product at a lower price. So now they can consume more, you can produce more, you are on a higher indifference curve. So that is what happens here also. Our focus of attention is that with this trade, how does it have an impact on labor? How does this trade have an impact on capital? How does this have an impact on land? So if you have to answer that, you have to see what happens to the wages, what happens to the rate of return on capital, what happens to the rate of return on land. Okay. Now, as far as wages are concerned, now see this, remember labor is mobile. So if one sector is giving higher wages, you know what will happen. The labor from here would move from here, from this sector to that sector. If the wages are here higher in the other sector, the labor will move from this sector to another sector. So at the end, you will have the same wages across the sector, right. So wages will be equalized. And how are wages determined? Remember, wages are determined, wages are equal to the prices into MPLs. Wherever the value of marginal productivity is equal to the wage rate, this is how wages are determined. Now you have to recall from your microeconomic theory, there is something like a demand curve for labor. The demand curve for labor is called the VMPL. Demand curve for labor is the VMPL. This is the VMPL, this is the demand curve for labor, and because you assume perfect competition in both product and factor markets, the supply curve of labor is perfectly elastic. Wherever the supply of labor cuts VMPL, this is the amount of labor that a firm would employ. This VMPL is the demand curve for labor. So the theory of production will devote certain pages on why is this a demand curve for labor. Okay. And this is equal to P into MPL. So this is again, this bit of information is again put here, where on the y axis you have wages on both sides, and then because you have two sectors and wages will be the same in both the sectors, initially L amount of labor will be employed in the manufacturing sector, the rest of the labor will be employed in the agricultural sector. Now see what happens with trade. The price of manufacturing goes up. So if the price of manufacturing goes up, as the price of manufacturing goes up, the labor shifts from agriculture to manufacturing sector. So, now there will be more labor working in the manufacturing sector and less labor working in the agricultural sector, and the wages would go up from W star to W double star. Okay. So, wages will be equalized in both the sectors, but wage W will go up. Now, what is important is what happens to the real wages, that is wages by price of manufacturing and wages to price of the agricultural sector. What happens to these? Now, remember, price of manufacturing has also gone up, wages have also gone up. Here wages have gone up, price of agricultural sector has remained same. So, one thing is clear, that the marginal productivity of labor in the agricultural sector goes up, all right. Marginal productivity of labor in agricultural sector goes up, and this we had already analyzed, that when labor moved out from agricultural sector to another sector, you had less of labor means marginal productivity of labor in the agricultural sector goes up, right. So, this goes up, but remember what happens to the marginal productivity in the manufacturing sector? It goes down, because now you have more of labor coming in. More of labor coming in means diminishing marginal productivity. So, when this ratio goes up, marginal productivity of labor in manufacturing, this goes down. How can it go down? How can it go down when wages are also increasing, price of manufacturing is also increasing? If the increase in wages is less than the increase in prices, absolutely. And you can see from this diagram also, the increase in prices is this much, the increase in wage rates are only this. So, the increase in wages are less than the increase in prices. So, if someone asks you what happens to the returns to labor in this type of setting, it is ambiguous, because on the one hand the labor, the marginal productivity is gone up in the agricultural sector, but on the other hand the marginal productivity of labor in manufacturing has gone down. At the end it will depend on how much are you consuming the manufacturing product, how much are you consuming the agricultural product. So, it is ambiguous. So, the returns to labor, so the gist is the returns to labor in the specific factor model is ambiguous. That is result number 1 of this model. What about, so now we come to the returns to capital. Can you intuitively think what will happen to the returns to capital? Returns to capital. Now, you had capital, now it has been supported by more of agriculture coming in. So, can you let me know that if labor is coming in and you have capital, what will happen to the marginal productivity of capital? It is not capital coming in, it is the labor which is supporting now capital, more of labor coming in. So, what happens to the marginal productivity of capital? Goes up, right. And we will mathematically also prove that if labor goes up and the marginal productivity of capital goes up, because now supported by more of labor. So, that is what happened. the returns to capital, the real returns to capital, it goes up. What are the real returns to capital? What do you call it? Rentals? Yeah, rentals to price of manufacturing by rentals to price of agriculture. The marginal productivity goes up. There is no change in the prices here, right? This also goes up, but remember, PM has, price of manufacturing has gone up, the marginal productivity of capital has gone up. So when can this happen? When can this happen? Here you said that this has gone down because the increase in wages are less than the increase in prices. Here, if this has to go up, the returns to rentals are greater than the increase in price of manufacturing. Okay. And this Feenstra and Taylor gives a certain numericals to prove this thing. You can have a look at it. But what is important is the marginal productivity of capital. This is, I am just restating the law of diminishing marginal productivity, that with an increase in labor, the marginal productivity of labor goes down, but the marginal productivity of capital, it goes up with an increase in labor. Okay.
Is increasing in the manufacturing
sector, but yeah, but remember this this rentals are going up, right, and there is no change in price of agricultural sector, right. So this ratio also goes up.
So, why are rentals going up today?
Well, okay, you know about the law of diminishing marginal productivity, that when you increase labor, output increases, but increases at a decreasing rate. So the neoclassical production function assumes that marginal productivities are positive but declining. But another thing which is also true is that when you increase labor in an industry, the marginal productivity of capital goes up, because capital is now supported by more of labor. Okay. Try doing this exercise where you have x as a function of k and L, right. Find out marginal productivity of capital, find out marginal productivity of labor. Okay. And then if you differentiate the marginal productivity of capital with respect to labor, you will see a peculiar result, not peculiar, but an obvious result, that this MPK increases with an increase in labor. How? Okay, let us, if you want, let us do that. But then you have to think it that it's, the capital is now supported by more of labor, and in the other sector, that land, that poor land, is now with less of labor. So the marginal productivity of land goes down. So that happens. So here See, it's a new classical production function. So, if you increase capital and labor by a factor lambda, output also increases by a factor lambda. You have constant returns to scale. You have constant returns to scale. So, let lambda will be equal to 1 by L. So, f k by L 1 is 1 by L f k L, that is the output. Output is L times f k. So, x is L times f k, differentiate this with respect to k. So, you get f dash k L, the derivative of small k. So, small k is k by L. So, then if you differentiate it with k, or say, okay, 1 minute, let me change it a little bit. Okay, so, lambda 1 by L f k L, that is output, L times function small k is k by L. Differentiate this with respect to big K, that is marginal productivity of capital. This by assumption in the neoclassical production function is greater than 0. So, it is f dash k 1 by L, because small k is k by L. So, if you differentiate with respect to big K, you get 1 by L. Now, what happens to marginal productivity of capital if labor comes in, right? That is what we are trying to analyze. You increase manufacturing, so more labor comes in to support the capital. So, del x, del k, del by del L. So, del x by del k is f dash k. So, it becomes f double dash k, the derivative of small k with respect to L minus k by L square. You have a negative sign, but this is negative. So, this is negative minus k by L square. So, you get this to be greater than 0. Okay. And why is this negative? If you do an exercise further, you find out marginal productivity of labor, then you find out what happens to the marginal productivity, what happens to the, you find out FKK, you find out FLL, this is FK, you find out FL, find out FKK, FKK will be del 2x del k square, FLL will be del 2x del L square. From these two you will get a result which will show you that f double dash k will be less than 0. So, if this is less than 0, this is greater than 0. Now, see what is happening. If labor is coming, and you can always find out del x del L 1 by del k. What happens if capital comes in to support the labor? This will again work out to be greater than 0. Yeah. Into minus k by L square. See, del by del, del x by del k, f double dash k into the derivative of small k with respect to big K, small k k by L. So, this is derivative of this del x by del k, which is this with respect to labor. Use the quotient rule, so minus k by L square. And I am saying this will turn out to be negative, because in the neoclassical production function you assume Fk to be greater than 0, Fl to be greater than 0, right, Fkk, Fll to be less than 0. So, if you do that exercise, you will see that with an increase in labor, this marginal productivity of capital goes up. So, leave aside mathematics, but think intuitively that in the land, if the labor goes from there to the manufacturing sector, land is now left with less of labor. So, then the marginal productivity of land would goes down, because it has less of labor to work with, and capital now is supported by more of labor. So, the marginal productivity of capital goes up. So, then rent, which is the return to land by price of agricultural sector, this goes down. So, then the final result is of the specific factor model is that the specific factor in the export sector gains and the specific factor in the import competing sector loses with trade. So, these Latin Americans, the export sector is the land, right, and the extraction of petroleum and natural gas is done by a very few companies, and they are basically multinationals which are operating in these Latin American countries. So, then if you see a trade, it is only those specific factors in the export sector who gains, but the others loses from this type of trade. Right. So, then in many countries like Bolivia, Ecuador or Venezuela, they are trying to nationalize the sale of petroleum and natural gas. So, even in Argentina, you see a trend where they are trying to nationalize these things. They do not want the multinationals to operate, because in that case they think that the gains are unequal, quite unequal. So, if you know that this is the theoretical result, then one should think that what should governments do? The government should compensate the losers, and yet you should be in a position that the welfare goes up. If you are not able to do it, then there will be surely some protest from the factors of production who loses. So, in all Latin American, the factors which are losing always protest, keep protesting, and you see fall of governments in every 2 or 3 years, because they think, or because the returns to trade are unequal, and the governments whichever come, they are not able to compensate the losers. So, now they are thinking that the option is to nationalize everything, where they have the entire resources. Is that the right step? Is an open question. Okay, so I will end up here, and we will continue with the other trade model, the Heckscher-Ohlin, tomorrow, and there also you will see that trade brings unequal returns to the factors of production. Okay. Thank you.